All right.
Hi, everybody.
Back for our Tuesday power lunch.
Yeah, I hope everybody had at least somewhat of a good long weekend. I know the weather was kind of iffy. I was saying today's probably the warmest and nicest day of the last couple we've had. So
Yeah, well, yesterday was humid. That's for
that's
sure.
true.
I was golfing yesterday, and that was a hot golf day. There was
Yeah,
no breeze. It was just hot and humid.
yeah.
But the golf was good.
I think there was one of the days that I walked outside and like it smells like a wet blanket out here. Like it's not nice. Anyways, we are starting the week off, the short week. I think it was yesterday the holiday. Yesterday was the holiday.
Yesterday was a holiday.
I don't know when holidays are anymore.
Well, Saturday was a holiday as well, but it was also a Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think that really counts. But we're going to start the short weekend off right with another power lunch. And we have, I think, what is going to be kind of a fun topic and one that I'm hoping if you're joining in, you might participate a little bit in.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about is bigger better? And we're talking about real estate, just to clarify. Hi,
Hey,
Sunny.
Sunny, what's up?
You came in at a really good time. So yeah, we wanted to talk about, I guess partially because of our journey and where we've gone in the last year and a half, talking about assets, because we get a lot of questions about why we went into the larger multifamily space. Why did we leave our comfort zone of SDU conversions,
Single family homes and,
Yeah.
and renovations and that kind of thing.
Exactly. And we figured we'd open up the discussion now and talk about our journey, our thoughts. And again, remember, these are our thoughts, our experiences. It's not necessarily that what we did in our journey is right for everybody. So definitely keep that in mind.
Definitely boils down to what are your goals.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But comment below. What do you think? What do you think? Does size matter?
Yeah. So
Is bigger better?
Like Sunny did, if you are joining us, say hi in the chat. This is really like an open discussion. We're going to have our banter, as I will call it. And if you have anything you want to chime in with, please make sure that you comment and be a part of the discussion.
Sunny likes big assets. I like it. I like it. I like big assets and I cannot lie.
Can we get a t-shirt?
Yeah, I think we can.
Can someone make us a I like big assets and I cannot lie t-shirt, please?
I love it.
Yeah.
Where's Connor to design it?
Yeah.
We need Connor.
Connor, if you're here, where are you at, man?
Sunny, why do you like big assets? I'll ask that question. I'll let you give a moment to respond, but I'll throw that out there and we'll continue on.
Yeah. I think you made a really good point right off the bat. So maybe before we get to the point that you made, why don't we talk about our journey over the last year and a half to kind of set the stage on why we're having this discussion.
Yeah. Well, when we started out, we didn't really know exactly. We had an idea of what we wanted to get into real estate. We didn't know exactly what that meant. We hadn't gone to a deep dive into goals or anything like that. We just thought, hey, we could afford to buy a house.
Yep.
So we did that, and we had watched a lot of like income property, or was that what that's called? Scott McGilvery Income Property.
Yeah.
On HGTV, where he turns people's homes into income properties. So he adds a secondary suite into the basement usually.
Yeah, I think we were both big HGTV nerds.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of our flipping background came from as well.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the asset, the lower the risk. Risk is spread out across multiple units. Economy of scale. I love it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, I think, a little bit. Maybe we'll hop into that as a part of our journey.
Sure.
Because we agree, Sunny.
We agree.
We're going to talk about why.
And yeah, so that was really how we started. We started with a single family home. We bought a bungalow. We actually moved into it. So we were house hacking as well. And we moved in with the intention of converting the basement into a secondary dwelling unit, as they call it in Ottawa, ADU in other places. Basically just adding a legal suite into the basement, legal apartment. Yeah, it was one heck of a journey when we didn't really know all of the ins and outs of doing it. We kind of it was almost trial by error a little bit.
Yeah. We thought we knew enough going into it, and I think that's a pretty common statement among a lot of people that are getting started, especially if they don't have guidance beyond books and YouTube. I think a lot of people think they know enough, and really the way that we describe it often with people that we're talking to is like, you know, these bits and pieces, but they don't really come together to create a foundation. So there's a lot of holes in the foundation that you think you've built, because books and YouTube, they're not specific to where you are at and what you need for that project. So we had a lot of holes in our foundation.
Yeah, it's a lot of general information, no real guidance. And I think that was the biggest problem. I think I like to say it as, I don't know what I don't know. Yeah. So if I'm looking up something specific, then I'll find an answer to that specific question. But if I don't know the right question to ask, then I don't know the right information to find.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, I mean, this is kind of an off the trail, off the topic, but that's where we found that guidance was so important, because they can tell you like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this gap? Have you asked these questions? Have you set this up? And then that's filling in that, like, you know, the cheese, right? If like you're thinking of cheese, it's full of holes, they're going to be patching that for you. I relate a lot of things to food. It's fine. But yeah, anyways, we had a lot of holes. We learned a lot. We patched some of them on our own during that project. But I think really what it comes down to when we were doing that project is that's all that we thought we could do.
Yes. I think that's one of the most important parts of that, is that we had a ceiling. Yeah. We thought that was the most we could do because we could buy a house and that was it. Right?
Yeah. I think you watch people, like Grant Cardone, you know, love him or hate him. I'm not going to talk about that. Him and like Donald Trump, again, hate him or love him. We're not going to talk about that. But you watch these people buying these big assets, and you think only they can do that because they're wealthy. Like they already have wealth, and that's why they can buy these bigger units. Yeah. So we thought we were stuck in the single family home space because that's what, you know, average folk like us could do. That's what our limitations were, or so we thought. Yeah, Yishi, we like Grant as well. Not everything he says, but there's a lot that we really enjoy as far as motivation and inspiration goes.
Yeah, and anything relating to sales.
Yeah, 100%. You don't have to love everything a human says, but you can take what you need from them. Anyways, yeah, I think we just at that point didn't know that we could do more. And in the last year got into a room where people were doing more. So we were stuck in the single family home flip space, in the SDU space. We were filling in those holes from our first project by
go watch our last video, which we talk about getting into that room.
Yes.
Getting in, finding that community and getting into the room where people are doing what you want to do. That was our last week's topic. It's on YouTube as well.
Go more in depth into this
topic. The power of community, I think, is what it's called.
Yeah. So getting into that community, we realized that we could do bigger things. And we realized that it wasn't for just the Grant Cardones of the world, that Grant Cardone started somewhere as well. And that it was a possibility for average folk like us. So, you know, not only was it a possibility, but we also learned a lot about, I don't want to say why it's better.
Why it was better for us.
Why it was better for us. Yeah, why it made more sense for us to go into the larger multifamily space. So I guess, and then going back to, like, this is going into what Sunny said, is the bigger the asset, the lower the risk. The risk is spread amongst, you know, more units than maybe one or two. So why don't we jump into that? Because that was really one of the big reasons that we decided to go into the larger multifamily space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you like to talk about economy of scale.
I do. There's a couple of ways that we could go with this, but I think to keep it simple, maybe we'll talk about a good example of just reducing expenses. So let's say you have a single family home. Well, let's compare a single family home to a 60-unit apartment building. And without going into like cap rates and all that, we're just going to talk about simple.
But I like cap rates.
I know, but this isn't like a presentation style. We're just we're gonna maybe confuse people that don't quite know what it is at this point. But if you have a single family home And let's say you want to upgrade the toilet to be more efficient and upgrade your faucets to be more eco-friendly and use less water. If you use less water, you're going to be reducing your water bill. Let's say you reduce your water bill by $20 a month. I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you've upgraded your toilet and all that. And ignore the cost right now of what it takes to actually upgrade the toilet and the faucets and everything. But if you reduce your monthly expenses by $20 a month with a single family home, nothing to really write home about. But if you have 60 units
$20.
and you reduce your monthly water bill by $20 a month for 60 units,
mm-hmm.
now that's a much bigger amount of savings overall.
Yeah.
Throw cap rates in there and you can really determine how much you've increased the value of your building. But we won't do that in this.
Yeah, but for those of you who do like to use cap rates, you can start thinking of like, you take that, multiply that by 12, and you divide that for whatever cap rate you are. Okay, I'm going to throw it in there. You're going to divide it by whatever cap rate I can't help it. I love cap rates. Divide it by whatever the cap rate is for the area you're working with. And now you have a value increase for your building, which is even more than the savings that you have every month. So that's going to increase, like that's an exponential increase in the value of your building versus what that would give you if you were looking at like, fourplex even. So, sorry.
Economy of scale.
I had to go there.
Sunny says, I like big assets and I can refi. I love it.
And that's where things like this, like reducing expenses.
Increasing the value of your property overall.
Yeah. Thanks, Yishi. So Yishi said if that's a 5 cap, it's an increase in value of $288,000. So cap
28,800.
No.
Or 288,000. There we go. That does make more sense.
Yeah. I was like, okay, yeah. Big monies. So that's where, to us, it made a lot of sense. Like we can add a lot more value to these buildings if we're going larger. And I think the other thing that I like to talk about is if you have your 60 unit building, yes, the roof on that 60 unit building is more expensive than the roof of a single family home, but you were talking about 60 units. So now you have a 60 unit building. If you're going to do the equivalent of that for number of units, you're going to have 60 single family homes, which
I can guarantee
hurts my head.
My 60 unit apartment building's roof costs less than 60 single family home roofs.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what I start talking to students about because they're like, oh, like it's going to be really expensive if I have to go and replace that roof. Yes, but if you want to scale your portfolio and you want to get to, 60 units, something like that, now you're going to have to be replacing all of these different roofs instead of having to deal with one roof that, yes, is a bit more expensive, but is much cheaper than dealing with and like the time and the headache of dealing with that many roofs. And the other thing I think about is if you have those 60 houses, I pretty much guarantee they're not going to all be on the same street. And if they are, then you're pretty lucky you've bought the whole street. So
yeah, I mean, we're talking about geographical location so your 60 units is all in one building, all in one location. So ease of property management, right? Versus 60 single family homes, which even if they're all in the same city, I mean, driving around Ottawa takes a long time.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So if you're trying to manage these properties,
like the headache, the gas money, the time that you're spending to drive between all these properties. So
the resources, sending them to one property, that now your resources are tied up at that one property. You have 59 other properties that might need some attention.
Yeah. So to me, like once I started thinking of all these things, for us, it made more sense because we knew that we wanted to build a big portfolio. We didn't want to stop at one property to supplement some of our income. We knew that we went in this full time. So obviously we're putting ourselves into this world, and we knew we wanted to build a big portfolio. So for us, it didn't make sense to try to scale using duplexes. It made a lot more sense to now go after buildings where those units, you had more units under one roof because it made sense for our goal to scale. It was going to be easier to manage. It was going to be overall cheaper to actually deal with because you get to the economy of scale. And then you can do things like increase the value a lot faster. So for us, it made a ton of sense to go a lot bigger
Yeah.
with one purchase.
Yeah, and we actually ended up skipping over the kind of the smaller multifamily space. When we got into multifamily, I mean, the first deal we got under contract was 16 units.
Yeah.
So we're like, we skipped over the fourplexes, sixplexes,
And
thing.
it was because of this knowledge. It was because when we started to learn these things that we realized that we didn't necessarily want to take like the duplex, you know, fourplex and then 16 plus step. We were already familiar with the buy and hold space. We already had an idea of what managing properties looked like, of what managing tenants looked like. So for us, it was like, why take like these smaller steps when we could do a bit of a bigger jump, because we had built a foundation already.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's why we made that jump.
Yeah.
And Yishi,
Yishi
has a really good point too.
Yeah. Vacancy is much more under control on a 60 unit versus duplex, single family home, that kind of thing. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. If you have a single family home and your tenant leaves, let's say it's rented out and your tenant leaves, you're 100% vacant.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a 60 unit and a tenant leaves, it's almost a non-event, right? You've accounted for that little bit of vacancy. It's really hard to account for 100% vacancy when you're underwriting any deal. So
yeah, I mean, like you said, it really is a non-event. Like you probably wouldn't even notice that one person is gone because you have 59 other people who are paying your mortgage. And the comparison I always make is, would you rather own the convenience store that has one customer, or would you rather have the convenience store that has 60 customers? Because if that convenience store with one customer, if they are out of town for a day, if they find another corner store that they want to go to, you know, maybe it's summer and they have a garden and they don't need to come and buy vegetables from you as often, then you've lost your one customer and now you have no income.
And that actually brings up a good point, that your multifamily buildings should be looked at as a business, right? Just like you're going to look at your convenience store as a business. Your tenants are your customers.
And again, it all comes down to your goals. I think if you're going to be buying maybe one property, maybe you have like a kid or something, you're going to have one property and you want them to have a spot to live, and that's going to be your like your one piece of real estate that you're going to own. Maybe your goals are going to be different, and maybe you're going to look at it in a different way. But if you're looking at this from the lens of as an investor, like if this is what you want to be doing as far as investing goes,
if you're trying to grow a portfolio,
you need to be looking at these as a business. And again, back to what makes the most business sense, do you want to have more customers or do you want to have fewer customers? So again, it all comes back to what your goals are. But for us and for what our goals were, we wanted to grow, we wanted to expand. The multifamily space is what made the most sense from an income perspective and also from a risk perspective, because now having more units, you're actually mitigating your risk, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
We like to mitigate risk as much as possible.
Of course.
So Jasmine, what are your thoughts? Are you the liquidity of multifamily homes?
Multifamily homes, yeah, I guess so.
In the face of uncertainties. So I guess, so the question is, I'm assuming if you have like smaller multis or single family homes, what do you do as far as creating liquidity, especially in times like this where maybe properties aren't selling at their,
or interest rates have gone up and maybe you're in a negative cash flow situation?
Yeah. I think again, it comes back to what your goals are and what you can weather. If you have some equity in the property and you are looking at wanting to put that towards getting into larger multifamily, you know, I would say access that equity. Maybe that's not selling the property. Maybe that's, getting a home equity line of credit on it. Maybe it is selling the property and that's what makes the most sense for you. I know a lot of people are getting into some trouble right now where their properties are negative cash flowing because of the interest rates, and getting out of that property is what makes the most sense for them at that time. At the same time, there's some people that can weather that storm and maybe they'll be in a better place in a year. But again, you're kind of risking how long we're going to be in this situation for. So I think it really depends on who you are and what your current situation is and what your whole portfolio looks like. Because there's some people that they have assets that can cover the negative cash flow of that property for this short period of time. So they choose to hold that property. But for us, I mean, we just liquidated a property to, again, pull that equity out, put it into something bigger, and it wasn't going to cash flow with where the mortgage was going to be at this year. So with everything combined, it made the most sense for us to sell that property. But that's not necessarily the case for everybody. So I think it really depends on what your situation is and what your goals are.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to?
I think just when it comes to bigger multifamily properties, I think it's almost looked at. I look at it a little bit differently anyway. If we're on a fixed rate mortgage and we have a larger multifamily and there's something happening with, first of all, there's a difference between the housing market and just like interest rate market. That's those, sure, one affects the other one, but and then you're talking about commercial properties is very, very different, right? So housing market versus commercial properties, and then what those interest rates look like. So there's a difference there. If you get into the commercial space and you're just doing buy and hold, if you're in a fixed mortgage, you should be able to kind of weather that storm and just buy and hold through it. Maybe your plan was to sell during the down market, but because it's a down market, you decide to hold instead.
Yeah, that's the nice part about having those, like having a fixed rate mortgage in, especially in the buy and hold space. That's something that we do with our buy and hold properties, so that we know, like, I don't care if the interest rate goes down or up. I know exactly what I'm paying every month, and I know my property works at that interest rate. So I'm not going to get greedy and try to, work with a lower interest rate and hope that they'll go down. I know it works at the interest rates now, so that's what I'm okay with paying.
Yeah, there's a level of certainty and comfort in having that fixed rate mortgage. You know what your numbers are, you know what your cash flow is. And instead of just trying to squeeze every dime out of the cash flow just because the interest rates may have gone down or something, fixed rate tends to be a little bit more comfortable with that.
Yeah. The other thing, actually, I want to go back to what Jasmine had asked about liquidating properties. And I think even beyond kind of the times that we're in right now, I don't think we're saying, liquidate out all your small stuff and get into larger multifamily. That's not necessarily what we're saying, because I think there is still some value in holding some of your smaller properties if they're working, right? Like if you have good cash flow from them, maybe you can use them as ways to refinance or have HELOCs, something like that you can keep kind of rotating this money out. I know we still have our very first project that we did. It's an SDU. That one actually has some potential we're hoping for future development because it's got a larger lot on it. So for us, yes, we could liquidate it and pull out, there's a decent amount of equity in it. We could totally liquidate it and throw that into some larger multis. But for us, for that property, it's cash flowing well. There is some future potential with it. So we've decided to hold on to it. So even if you want to get into the larger multifamilies, it's not necessarily like wipe out what you have and now go into multis. You don't have to do that. You can still hold on to some of your smaller properties. Maybe you liquidate some, maybe you hold on to some, and then you add in the larger multis. So there's not, again, it's, with real estate, everything's so gray. There's not like a do this, do that, these are the steps. It really depends on, what your portfolio looks like, what's working, what's not, what your situation is, what your goals are. So don't take this as sell everything you have that's, under 6 units and throw it all into larger multis. That's not what we're saying. These are just things to think about when you're looking at real estate.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
well said.
Thank you. I just don't want everyone to have like a mass sale of their smaller multis after this.
Yeah. Moderation in everything. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at each property individually, right? Look at each property as its own business. You don't have to necessarily look at your entire portfolio as a business, although you should. But you can look at each individual aspect of that portfolio.
Yeah. I think it also depends on what you want to do with the property too, because there's some people
Yeah,
that,
what the plans with it?
yeah, like there's some people that want to do rent to own, which, you know, makes more sense with a single family home. People want to do like vacation rentals and Airbnb, depending on what area they're in. That makes more sense with a single family home.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what type of real estate you're getting into, whether you go bigger or go smaller. We knew we wanted to do long-term rentals. So for us, that made sense to go into the larger multifamily space.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I could keep talking forever. I'm like, are we good?
I don't know. I think we're good, but
I have one more thing that I wanted to end with, which is why I was like, I don't want to just keep talking. If you have
all right.
something else to
No,
add.
I think we're good, but
okay. So my one last thing that I wanted to add is it's okay if you want to like start in the smaller rental space. I think, again, we're not saying that you have to jump into the commercial multifamily space. You don't have to jump into doing 20-unit buildings. If you want to get your feet wet in the, you know, duplex, triplex space, I still would, I think I'm going to say this, I would still avoid the single family home space. So at least you have 2 or 3 units that you're purchasing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I do.
I might regret that. I don't know. I never want to say like, again, all very great, depends on everyone's goals. But
again, like think about vacancy from that perspective, yes, right?
Exactly.
So if you have 3 tenants versus 1 tenant and 1 leaves,
100% vacancy.
Yeah, your triplex is going to be in a better position. Yeah.
So I'll stand by that. You know, still you do you. It's up to you. But if you want to start in the smaller multifamily space, I think that's okay. I'm not saying, you know, I don't think we're saying you have to start in the larger multifamily space. Maybe get your feet wet, especially if you have decided to go the route of not having guidance, which is not the way that I would recommend it. But if that's the way you've decided to do it, maybe starting smaller to get your feet wet and learn the basics is a good way of doing it. I think the big thing to remember is that it is possible to go bigger.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here isn't do not buy smaller multis. It's buy smaller multis if you want to, but know that that's not your limit. Know that you can go bigger. So what I say is it's okay to do smaller. It's not okay to do it because you don't think you can do bigger. So that's...
Damn.
Yeah.
That's my wife.
It's funny because the reason that I wanted to say this is because I got asked this at a talk I did recently. And when I said it, I was like, okay,
Sass.
Yeah, I was like, hey, that's pretty good.
If you don't know what you want to do, reach out to us.
Yeah.
We would love to chat with you, love to brainstorm, figure out what kind of makes the most sense for you, your situation, your goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. We're here to chat. We're here to, I mean, there's only so much we can do in a short period of like a conversation, but if you're looking for more guidance, we're also here for that. Yeah. But definitely reach out, chat with us. We're happy to help where we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this, drop a comment, drop a like, share it with your friends. And again, it'll be on YouTube, and we do this every Tuesday, 12:30 Eastern time as a power lunch.
Yeah. And
join us while you eat.
I hope that we answered our age-old question.
Is bigger better? Does size matter?
Does it matter? I don't know. All right. We'll see you next week. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.